Hello everybody and welcome back to another edition of KerVAM, and this time round it's our first of our weekly podcast where we're going to be discussing all 6 episodes of Doctor Who Flux. I know that we're normally a podcast that talks about Doctor Who Blu-rays and DVDs, and we will do that because, you know, there is a sort of a release to discuss today, and there is Galaxy 4, there can be the Season 17 box set, there is stuff to discuss, but also we're a Doctor Who podcast, so I thought, you know, it makes sense for us to chat about the current series and what's going on with the current show. We've talked a bit about RTD in the past and some of the Series 13 trailers and some of our, you know, more or less positive thoughts about what we expected from Series 13, or what we now know as Doctor Who Flux. Today I'm joined by Ryan, Bill and Charlie, and we're going to chat all about the first episode of the Halloween Apocalypse. So, guys, hello, how are you all?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Can't wait to finally talk about this much long-awaited mini-series. Should be fun, am I right, guys?
Yep, it should be a lot of fun to, like you say, talk about it and, just to share our thoughts on it. Yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, same here. It'll be great. I've written a review and I've posted one, so I've got quite a lot of opinions about it, and I may have watched it 3 times.
Very good, very good. I've watched it twice so far. I watched it and I made 3 pages of notes earlier when I watched it today, and then did a 30-odd minute review on YouTube about it. So I also feel like I've well covered some of my opinions on it. I don't know, have either of you seen it more than once yet, guys?
I've seen it twice because the first, I'll delve into thoughts later on, but let's just say after the first time, I felt like I needed to watch it the second time. And this second time, I needed to take a lot of notes because, we'll discuss a bit later on about our general thoughts.
Yes, exactly. Bill, what about you?
I've seen it twice as well, and I don't want to give too much away about my thoughts on it, but suffice it to say, I really did feel like Ryan, that I needed to watch it second time round and to just fully come to terms with what my exact thoughts on it were. Yeah. And I think I've done that now. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, it was one of those episodes that definitely needed rewatching given the amount of stuff they threw into it. Ryan, take it away. You go first. Give us your initial thoughts, your kind of just any old thoughts you like about the episode.
Wow, okay. I think I enjoyed it, but I feel like I need to watch the other episodes to get a much better understanding, because it's one thing for it to start the mystery and just throw a few mysteries at you, but the fact that they threw in so many, it feels like I kind of felt like it was hard to keep up at times with the amount of like new mysteries that they were throwing in, and I had to make a lot of notes just to keep a track of every single like dangling plot thread that they had.
Yep, I did that.
On that story, so which I'm pretty sure we'll discuss at length as we go on. But suffice to say, it's thrown a lot of stuff, and I'm not entirely sure if it all comes together as a solid, cohesive experience because of the amount of stuff. But I think I did enjoy it. But again, I think I need to see the other episodes in order for it to feel a bit more satisfactory, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, while making my notes on this episode the second time, I kind of went through, and as they introduced new plot, like different plots and plot lines to it, I kind of made a note with each one. And I think I calculated by the end of the episode, there were 12 different plots incorporated into this one episode is what I got to. Obviously, 1 or 2 of them get knocked off by the end of it, like the Arctic plot line is a bit of a nothingy thing that kind of gets merged into another one. But yeah, it feels like there's a good at least 8 or 9 kind of stories that are left open running into the second episode. So I think it's one of those where like we've kind of watched a beginning. We haven't seen like a classic Monster of the Week beginning, middle, end story structure. We've seen the beginning, and we've still got to actually see the next 5 episodes to play out to really kind of understand where the rest of this story is going. I don't know, Charlie, you said you made a lot of notes. So what was your take on the Halloween Apocalypse?
Well, what you were saying, Elliot, about the 12 different plot lines, I actually worked out 12 as well.
Happy days.
Yeah, I did notice there were so many of these puzzle pieces that they just threw down.
Yeah.
They've not all connected yet. And I quite like that. I'm very glad that they've not just done an episodic Monster of the Week series like it's still 2007 or whatever. You know, I'm glad they've moved on, and I'm hoping that they'll just continue this into the RTD2 era. But generally, I really, really liked the episode. It's not my favorite Jodie Whittaker episode, but it's definitely up there in like her top 5, I'd say. Obviously, as you were saying, Ryan, I'll need to watch the rest to give a proper informed opinion on it. But for now, given that, I really did enjoy it. And the new Sontarans are great. I love that design. The Weeping Angel scene was really cool, and the cinematography in general was fantastic. I really did enjoy it.
100%. Bill, what was your initial take on it?
Well, I think initially I finished it thinking, wow, that was actually pretty damn good. It was actually like a really pretty good episode. I mean, you know, for me, not the greatest Jodie Whittaker episode of all time, and definitely not one of the greatest ever, but still a very solid start to the series. And it just did a great job of, just like you say, just being the beginning. And it wasn't about just being a normal Doctor Who episode. It was just about, we've got to introduce the idea of the Flux, we've got to introduce the idea of the Swarm, etc. And, you know, cover the reintroduction of like the Sontarans and Weeping Angels, and the introduction of Carvinista as well. And I think it, considering it was only like a 50-minute long episode, I think it did pretty well in covering like most of that. Like there are definitely ways it could have improved it, sure, but I think if it had been much more kind of thought out, a lot of it, then you would have probably had double the length time. So I think with 50 minutes it did very well, and it is, you know, we will have to just wait and see ultimately how the rest of the series pans out, but it's a very solid start, definitely. And I was very surprised by just how great it was, like I say.
Yeah, I get the impression that generally people's responses has been pretty positive to the episode. Like, I've seen very few people saying, well, that was awful and things like that. Sure, you know, you always get a few, but I feel like compared to a lot of what we've seen in the Whittaker era that's been very kind of divisive and, you know, criticised a lot, I feel like people are generally feeling more optimistic based on this, because as you say, Charlie, it's something very different. It's doing all this one story. We knew that it would kind of play out something like this when they described we were going to do 6 episodes, one story. You know, it was going to be slightly different to what we were used to. But I felt like this was really different. Like, you know, as you say, there wasn't a story with a beginning, middle, and end there. There was a little bit of it with the Doctor versus Carvanista storyline and Carvanista kidnapping Dan, and that kind of had somewhat of a sort of conclusion when we found out that he wasn't actually a bad guy and all of that. I mean, I love that. I don't know. What do you think of the sort of idea behind that, and Carvanista as a character? What did you guys think of him and kind of the concept of him?
Well, funnily enough, when they first started showing images of him, I just thought, oh, a dog alien. But then again, I thought back to the cat people from the David Tennant, and I thought, I can't really criticize it because they did animal alien before, they could do it again. I thought he was just going to be like a generic rubbish monster of the week, but when he reveals that he was actually not that at all, I actually really liked the Carvanista more than I thought I was going to do because of that reveal. And I thought it was a nice, neat little twist on that idea where it thinks it's going to be a generic monster of the week, but then it turns out, it's the other way around. And it does play part into the whole division storyline, which I called after the Timeless Children, that they're definitely going to do something with that, of course, because there's still the question of why did the Time Lords erase that from the Matrix and not the fact the Doctor's the Timeless Child. So it does feel like it's clear that they are doing something with it, even if I still have certain reservations about anything connected to the Timeless Child, but I'm pretty sure we'll discuss that a bit later.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, you know, I was surprised, certainly, when the division came in so quickly into this story, both with Swarm and then with Carvanista as well, and we learn he's an operative for it, which opens up a whole new world of confusion of, oh wait, is it not just a Time Lord organization? I don't know, that feels like it opens up a lot more confusion there. But what did you guys think of just the, as I say, the kind of story that we had in this as close to a story as we got in this episode with Carvanista versus the Doctor?
Well, as I said, I think it's kind of tricks you at the beginning because, as I said, it feels like they are setting it up to be like a monster of the week. But the fact that they throw in more after the title sequence and they do start laying in all the questions, it seems like they do subvert that somewhat. So it's like, okay, so they really are sticking to their guns. It's not just a individual standalone episodes with a little tiny bit that leads you into the finale. It's actually the first of a 6-chapter story, which I think was a nice subversion of that. I'm still undecided about the whole execution, only because of the fact that they threw in so many questions and dangling plot threads at you so much in this first story. And to be honest, after I watched it the first time, I actually thought to myself, it kind of makes the stories of Series 6 of the Matt Smith era look more subdued and cohesive in comparison.
Yes.
But even then, it's sort of, I do like the fact that they do sort of subvert the typical tropes of the monster of the week, and it is sort of the start of something much bigger, even if I'm still sort of curious of how it's all going to pan out within the next 5 episodes, or technically 8 if we're counting the 3 specials next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating that we know nothing about the later half of this series. Like, we know that there's the next episode is a Centauran story, and that's the bulk of what the next episode is going to be about. But past that, we know virtually nothing. We've got no episode. They've specifically held back the episode title for episode 3 in the synopsis, so that suggests that there's something interesting in there. And they just don't want to tell us anything about the show. So I feel like it really leaves us in this. We've got all these different possible storylines that are somehow going to weave themselves in. I mean, I don't know what you guys thought. I felt like of all of them, the Liverpool 1800s one seemed a bit of an odd one to drop into this particular episode. I don't know. I'm sure it will have relevance and it will all tie together at some point, because I feel like Chris is reasonably good at kind of tying all things and linking things in. And I'm sure it will. It just, because it wasn't expanded on at all more in this episode, apart from that 2-minute scene after the title sequence, it felt like it was a bit just unnecessary to include it in this first episode. I don't know. Charlie, what did you think about the Liverpool, that part of Liverpool scene that we got?
I just think, I agree. It was really strange. I mean, I watched it 3 times, and even now, I don't really understand its relevance. It was just them talking about where they were in some sort of mine, talking about like things. I don't really get it. I feel that it's got to have some sort of relevance. They wouldn't just add it for the sake of it, especially with all the other plot lines going on. But it does feel a bit strange. I did think originally it might have something to do with the Crimean War plot, because I don't know much about history. It might have been around that time. I don't really know.
Okay.
But yeah, at the end of the day, it's a bit of a weird plot line that I'm sure will get resolved, but I'm clueless as to how.
Yeah, I mean, I know this chap Williamson is like famous for, I think, building or designing these underground tunnels in Liverpool, I think. And I feel like I read somewhere that like no one quite knows why he wanted to design them or something along those lines. It wasn't quite clear what the purpose of them was, which is kind of what that scene was playing on, of like, why are you doing this kind of thing? And then he uses the word, does he say it's like cataclysmic or something like that, which I thought linked into the description of the flux as well, which I thought was quite intriguing. I don't know. I was desperately trying to read something into this scene when we got virtually nothing there. I don't know. Ryan, have you got any way of enlightening us?
Well, I do know. I've looked at the credits for War of the Sontards, and I believe that Williamson is in that episode also.
So it's going to be expanded on, yeah.
But I'm just a bit concerned. If it's just going to be another brief scene like this one we just had, it just leaves me wondering, why couldn't they just all saved it for the episode where they actually properly delve into this? Because to shove it in out of nowhere, it just feels a little bit, as I said, it makes the pacing feel a little bit odd, that this scene has seemingly no relevance to anything that's going on for the rest of the story. I'm pretty sure it will by the end, but it just feels like the way it's placed after the credits of episode 1, it just feels a little bit strange. It kind of reminds me of the whole Brendan stuff from Ascension of the Cybermen a bit. And because it's just like, what was the point of this subplot that has no relevance to this cyber war story? And I still think to this day that they should have saved the Brendan stuff as the pre-title sequence for the Timeless Children. I feel like it would have been much better. It wouldn't have improved that episode greatly, but I still feel like it would have been something of a mysterious introduction. I feel like they should have done something similar with this.
Yeah.
If they were going to do this whole Liverpool 1820 storyline, they should have saved all these little scenes for when we do properly delve into it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Bill, we've said about the Liverpool kind of storyline maybe not being necessary. How did you feel generally about having all these different plots? Do you feel like there were any that they should have kind of held back? Any other ones they should have held back, or do you think they mostly got it right?
I do agree that like the Liverpool 1820s one and then the Arctic Circle one seems to kind of just go nowhere in this episode anyway. I mean, obviously it's only episode 1. There's still plenty of time for them to explain it all later on. But yeah, it was very strange, those scenes. I think everything else like sort of ties together quite well for most part. I think the stuff in modern day Liverpool was obviously like the main bulk of the story, so that all tied together very well, very nicely. And then I was just thinking, why are we going to Liverpool in the 1820s? I mean, it's not like I mind that scene. I don't mind it at all, but I'm just thinking like, what's that going to happen? Is it got something to do with the next episode, or is it something else that's going on? Not too sure. But yeah, I think like the main bit of the story with modern day Liverpool, as I say, and then the Flux itself, really good. And it's very refreshing, to be honest, to kind of get a sense of like with this series, and especially with this era of Doctor Who, there is a huge sense of big stakes here. Like, we're literally dealing with the end of the universe here, which I think is actually, probably what the Chris Chibnall era needs in a way. I think it needs a massive kick up the backside in like this to kind of to get people interested and motivated enough to start, doing what we're doing and analyzing all these little plot threads and little clues and details and hints and everything. And yeah, I think you can just tell from just this one episode alone. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we don't know what the rest of the series is going to be like. So for all we know, this could be the only great episode of the series, and then everything else is not so great. But I think the bar has certainly been raised in kind of expectations. And I think, and I hope really that when people look back at Chris Chibnall's time as showrunner, once he's left and everything over the next few years, they'll look back at series 11 and 12 and think, yeah, okay, they were fair enough, but they're fine. But then they come to this series 13 or Doctor Who Flux, and they think, gosh, that was such a great series. That was what you could tell Chris Chibnall really, really does do well with serialized storylines. I mean, we knew this from Broadchurch anyway, but especially with just that one episode, you could just tell that Chris Chibnall was doing the kind of writing that he was familiar with, that he had a firm grasp on. And I'm hoping that this will kind of, like I say, just improve the reputation of his era to fans and just general viewers alike in the years to come. But whether it does or not, we'll have to wait and see.
Indeed, time will tell, as it always does. I'm sure many of the doctors have quoted something like that. I think it's going to be a fascinating series. I feel, as you say, the end of the universe stake. Sure, they've done it before. Yeah, we had it all in series 5. The cracks in time, end of the universe, TARDIS blowing up, blah blah blah. RTD did the end of the world every year for about 5 years, but this feels different. This maybe it's just because of the way it was visually realized, but I felt like you really felt the stakes. You saw this force that was disintegrating planets. Like they even went to the trouble of creating some random set of green humanoid aliens that we very briefly see getting zapped up and disintegrated. Just showing, making it real that there are alien planets that are getting their whole world wiped out in an instant. And I feel like that just really helps kind of sell it to the audience that this is serious, this is high stakes, this is really a force that we don't know how the Doctor's going to defeat. Given the at least the impression we got was the speed at which the Flux is moving across and destroying all of the universe. I don't really understand how the Doctor's going to get like solve all of this problem, but B, if it's going to happen, how like she's going to do it without kind of like rebooting the universe or turning back time or some, because clearly basically all the planets in the universe are going to be disintegrated. Like surely the only option will then be to like reverse the universe again, something a la Last of the Time Lords, or just go back in time and stop it from happening. Or I don't know. Do you guys have any sorts of theories about how the heck they're going to resolve? Because they've set up such a big, serious, threat. How the heck are they going to get themselves out of this?
Well, funny enough, the way it seems to then sort of divert and attacks the Doctor and the TARDIS, it does. Part of me is wondering whether it has something to do with the skull face aliens.
Swarm.
Who I think are actually confirmed to be the Ravagers. I think they are the Ravagers.
I believe so. Yeah, Swarm and Azure are the two people, I believe.
Yeah, and I have a little bit of a theory about both of them and why they're perhaps connected to the Doctor, but I think they're the one behind the flux.
Yeah.
I think they're, because it seems like the way they seem to connect with the Doctor, the minute like it starts happening and then it starts attacking them, it does seem like they're directly involved in all this. And and it's kind of like they're setting up the Ravagers to be the big bad of the season. In a way, it seems like.
Yeah, exactly. Charlie, what about you? What was your take on it?
Well, I do have some theories. I will get really annoyed if Chibnall decides to, do quite lazy writing and just like turn back time or reboot the universe or something. I did think, knowing Chibnall and how weird and annoying his plots can be, he might send the Doctor to a parallel universe or something along those lines, maybe.
Okay.
I don't really know. But what you're saying, Ryan, I do think that Swarm and Azure, they're probably the ones who started the flux, I should imagine. Although we really don't know. They might turn out to be good like Harvester.
Well, indeed. I mean, I think it's unlikely, to be honest. And I think it presents many interesting questions with Swarm in particular, seemingly having had a long history with the Doctor. Certainly, my reading on it was, it's pre-Hartnell Doctor days we're talking about here, the Division days, which are pre-Hartnell, and this was kind of like the equivalent of the Master from the pre-Hartnell days. But the Doctor obviously remembers none of this. I believe that he is not the Master. He's a completely separate, new to us character. I don't think that Swarm's just the Master before he became the Master we know or something. I feel like that'd just be such a cheap way to do it. And I just think it's gonna be fascinating to see. He seems, both of them, but he seems such a threat, such a presence on screen, and clearly having that knowledge of fighting with the Doctor and over again, like that is infinitely interesting to me. And then you also wonder, will we see some of their, shots, flashbacks to their battles of the past? Will we meet the Ruth Doctor again? Because presumably the Ruth Doctor was involved in some of their, shenanigans way back when. I don't know. I just think it opens up so many interesting possibilities and plot, options that they could go down for the next series, or the rest of the series even.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that they're going to be touching more. I do have the theory that the Swarm and the Ravagers were like the arch enemies of this sort of the timeless child Doctor before Hartnell, and it does seem like they're going to have to resolve everything to do with the fugitive Doctor eventually, because if not, it's going to result in a big open-ended like plot thread. Because it's like, is she definitely 100% pre-Hartnell? Because if she is, how is it that her TARDIS looks like a police box? I mean, it's still that question, so I do feel like that's a fugitive of the Judoon made that seem like a really big important thread. That if they drop that and it's not the fugitive Doctor, it's a different pre-Hartnell Doctor, it's going to feel a little bit weird. And also, they'll have to explain like why exactly it is that she left the Division and how she got like her mind wiped and transformed into the reset as the Hartnell Doctor.
Yeah, indeed. It really presents so many interesting possibilities. I just hope that Chibbers can pull it off, really. I am interested by the storyline. I want it to really all come together by the end of it. So I think one of the other key things we should probably mention is the main cast, the regulars, and the new companion, obviously Dan Lewis. So what did you guys think of? Well, obviously Jodie or 13th Doctor and Yaz, them back again, and seemingly I feel a little bit different this series, and also the inclusion of Dan as well. What did you feel about the new main cast in this episode?
I actually quite like Dan. I mean, when they announced it immediately after Revolution of the Daleks, I thought to myself, why do they have to bring in another companion? Could we just have just the Doctor and Yaz? I mean, why does Chibnall seem obsessed with writing group dynamics? And so that was my feelings going into it. And to be honest, I quite like Dan. I actually thought John Bishop did a really good job. He kind of brings that sort of that human warmth that Bradley Walsh had in the previous 2 seasons. Even though they're very different characters, I feel like he brings that sort of same earthy groundness the same way that Bradley Walsh did, which I feel like is definitely much needed, because I feel like Bradley Walsh was the real heart and soul of the last 2 seasons. I think of the last 2 seasons, he was the one that stood out the most. And so seeing him going at the end of series 12 was a real shame. So in a way, John Bishop is sort of there to sort of fill that void. I feel like he did a reasonably good job. And I like the sort of the little sort of regional rivalry between him and Yaz. I thought that was a nice little touch. And it seems like, although it seems like what may be happening, that he's sort of like the equivalent of Nardole, where he's there, but he's not like the primary companion. It seems like what they're putting more focus on Yaz this time around with this season, making her more so the main companion, which I feel like is definitely much needed because of how so underwritten she has been these past 2 seasons. So I feel like putting her much more in the spotlight will definitely go a long way to help perhaps redeem that character, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I certainly felt like I was noticing where, in the past 2 series, you'd have generic companion dialogue spread across 3 companions, and you'd go Yaz, Ryan, Graham, Graham, Ryan, Yaz, and just keep shooting dialogue back and forth between them. The pointless exposition-y stuff and questions and whatever. Whereas actually now Yaz gets all of that dialogue in one, and suddenly she becomes a proper character, and it's great. It's so much better than I think than we've had before. She's, is much more confident. She seems to she obviously wants to be like the Doctor, and we see that sort of with her, letting Dan out of the cage and things. You very much get that kind of trying to be like the Doctor sort of vibes from it, I think. And I was just really pleasantly surprised by that. And as you said, I think Dan was a really good addition to the team as well. Bill, what did you think of the main cast? Do you think that particularly 13 and Yaz, do you think they were an improvement over the previous couple of series?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I think like Ryan said, like Yaz felt a lot better written this time. Like she was given stuff to do, like finally, and that was that definitely helped her relationship with the Doctor, I think, to an extent, because I know, like, obviously at the end of the day we didn't get much like of just the 13th Doctor and Yaz together, but I do quite like that the fact that we start off at the beginning of the episode with a bit of that. And I think that's like really nice, because at least we kind of get it. We don't get it for very long, which is a shame, but we do get it nonetheless. And as for Dan himself, I think, like, I always knew from the moments that they cast John Bishop that he was basically going to be the kind of companion that Bradley Walsh was as Graham, and Matt Lucas was as Nardole, and Catherine Tate was as Donna, and all the rest. He was always going to be the comic relief, essentially. But I think John Bishop, because he is a pretty good comedian, I think he's able to kind of like, yes, he is the comic relief, but he still does a good, like, original spin on that. And what I like about Dan as well is also the fact that we are introduced to him, well, not just him, but also his own personal life in this episode. We get to find out that he's trying to, like, do tours at this local museum, but is getting into trouble about it. And then he also works at a food bank, and he's got this date with this Diane. And I think it's that kind of stuff, even if it was just there for just this episode, I think that kind of addresses a lot of the problems that I think people have had with the Chibnall era companions so far, is that it has been, like you say, they just just get exposition a lot of the time. They don't get much actual, like, it's different from the way that Russell T Davies used to do it, in that, you know, when you had companions, you got to meet their families, you got to see their own lives, you got to see what it was like for them before meeting the Doctor, and then how they would react to all the situations, and everything felt very real. They felt like real human beings, not just characters on a TV screen. So I think the fact that we've kind of returned to that, even if it is just ends up being just this one episode, I mean, I hope it's not, but even if it was, I think that's a really good step in the right direction. I mean, obviously, Chris Chibnall can only do so much, because I think that kind of writing at the end of the day is something that someone like Russell T Davies probably does the best.
Yeah.
But even Chris Chibnall, I think, I mean, it's very strange looking back on it, because we had a lot of that in Series 11. We had a lot of, especially with Graham, coming to terms with Grace's death and everything. And that, again, that made him feel like an actual human being. Like, I'm sure that, like, people probably related to him in some ways with that. And then it was, I think, like, Ryan as well, with the whole Grace's death as well. And then, Yaz, just until this episode, I think, just has definitely been the most underwritten and the most underutilized of them all, because we know that she started off as a police officer, and yet that was never really used very much. And now we find out that, I think she says, like, she's now formally a police officer or something, which I thought was a bit of a shame, because I would have kind of liked if Chris Chibnall maybe explored that a bit more, because, you know, it's not, I don't think anyway that we've ever actually had a police officer as a companion before. I could be wrong, but
not I can remember.
I don't think we've had.
No, I don't think so.
No. So I would have liked that to have been explored more. But yeah, Yaz and Dan, I feel, were just really utilized very well in this this one episode, because they felt like human beings. They felt like, you know, the whole companion's purpose is to serve as a sort of surrogate of the audience to the Doctor and everything. So I think they did really well in that, in fleshing them out and doing the usual companion stuff without it being too boring or too tedious or anything, you know, or too samey. I was really, really glad with I think with Dan's humor. John Bishop brought a lot of his own humor and wit to the part, and that really just shines through the scenes that he's in. Like the whole trick-or-treaters scene is just, it's just comedy gold, really. I mean, and that's purely because, I mean, it's written very funny, yes, but it wouldn't have been as good without John Bishop, I think. Like, I think it needs an actual comedian to actually really pull that off and everything. So I'm very happy with how they handled Dan and Yaz as well.
I will just say, in this one episode, I feel like the combination of Yaz and Dan feel like a much better combination than I had in the past two seasons with Yaz, Graham and Ryan, because even though individually I wouldn't say they're technically bad characters, but as a group, as a dynamic, it just didn't work at all. I just feel like the fam itself didn't really work. I never really got the sense that they were a fam. Oh, by the way, I could not stand that word getting repeated over and over for 2 seasons. And in a way, it's kind of like I said, they did more development here, like, say, with Ryan. I mean, with Ryan, they do set him up to be sort of a fascinating character, with him, like, having dyspraxia, and then all of a sudden he has parent issues. He's trying to accept Graham as his granddad. His grand dies in episode 1, so he's going through a lot of stuff. And while they do sort of resolve that in It Takes You Away, with Graham and Ryan having coming to terms with it, even though the Battle of Ranscore did try to do another resolution to it, which is all the reasons why I feel like that episode didn't work. But for the rest of the time, they just didn't really do anything. Well, Ryan especially didn't really do anything other than standing around in the in a room and explain things to. I just feel like it was a real shame. And it was the same situation with Yaz. So I'm hoping that we don't get too much of that in this season. I hope they're allowed to flesh out as characters much more.
Yeah, exactly. I'm certainly hopeful that that's going to be one of the much greater strengths of this series compared to what we've seen previously. So I think overall our thoughts are pretty positive, aren't they? After the first episode, I feel like we all generally agree that it's a pretty solid start to the series and we're excited to see what's to come.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, isn't that nice? We're talking good things about Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's going to be really, as I said, it's going to be really interesting to see how it all pans out from here on. I mean, as I said, I do think I enjoyed, but I think how if I could really accept it just really sort of depends on how these remaining 5 episodes. Well, again, technically 8 if we're counting the 3 specials next year. If they're connected with this, so it's going to be really dependent on how these remaining episodes do pan out. I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's going to be one of those series where we can't really decide how good it is until the very end. We can kind of say, yeah, we think it's quite good this week, but it's going to take until it all plays out before we finally know whether it's really that good or not. But that's pretty much all we've got time for this week. I did just want to mention that they have announced last week the Doctor Who Flux Blu-ray DVD Steelbook release. The Steelbook looks great. It's kind of overpriced. It's like 40 quid when the Blu-ray is like 20. So I don't know. Well, it depends how good the series is as to whether I get that or not, I think. But we'll see how it goes. I haven't really confirmed whether Revolution of the Daleks will be on there either. It's all a bit vague and we don't really know very much. So we'll have to just wait and see on that release. And obviously, once we know any more info, then we will let you all know. But yeah, that's pretty much it from this week's edition of KerVAM. We'll be back again this time next week to discuss War of the Centaurans. So a good old-fashioned Centauran adventure with a load of Flux stuff thrown in, I'm sure, as well, which is going to be really, really fun. Because as hopefully you guys know by now, we're doing weekly podcasts for every single episode of Doctor Who Flux. So as always, please do check us out on the socials, KerVAM Pod. Please do a subscribe or a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, however you do it on those ones. I can't even remember. But just keep a track of all our upcoming podcasts because there's going to be one every week. But apart from that, from all of us here, it's goodbye for now.